Mic check one, two.
Yo, get out of here with them weak ass shoes, yo.
Balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep in love. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep in love.
What up, Balls Deep fam? And to another episode of Balls Deep with Devin and Jovan. I'm Jovan. I'm here with my co-host Devin. We're gonna jump right into this episode. We're gonna be talking some NBA basketball. Very clearly, everybody that is following, we know that the NBA playoffs are currently going on. We just finished the conference semis. We're in the conference finals right now. So just to jump right into it, the Suns against the Nuggets. We had the Suns and the Nuggets in the semi-conference finals. Obviously, the Suns came out and just balled. They swept the Nuggets in 4. What would you see from the series? What did this series make you think about the rest of the playoffs? And where do you think the Nuggets kind of go from here?
Well, we didn't get to talk about the second round prior on the podcast prior to it happening, although we did predict the first round. But we did talk about the playoffs off camera. So when the Suns beat the Lakers in the first round, it was a mixture of both. Like, the Suns were hitting on all cylinders. They were looking like they couldn't miss, and the Lakers had dealt with injuries, and they just couldn't buy a basket to save their life. So when the Suns beat the Lakers, I came out and said that the Suns were winning it all. And I was rooting for them just because, Monty and CP, I'm rooting for them to get their first ring. Monty, with everything he's been through with his wife, and then CP, he's one of the greatest point guards of all time. He's just missing a ring. And then Devin Booker's my second favorite player in the league currently. So just rooting for them in general. But I think truly with the talent and the way that they've been playing, they could truly win it all. And I had that prediction even when the Nets were still in the playoffs. So with that being said, they literally carried that play against the Lakers and brought it into the second round. They were hitting on all cylinders. CP3 was, playing that X factor especially in the second half of the games, in the clutch, or even coming out of halftime in the third quarter when they needed him most. Devin Booker has just been waiting for the stage. He's been waiting for the stage. I think you mentioned it. He was like, he just needed CP3 and Monty to bring him to the playoffs, and then he took over. So the dude is phenomenal. I'm happy for him, and he's balling out. I mean, the only thing that surprised me about this series was that they finished them in 4. I truly thought the Nuggets would have put up a bigger fight than they did. They possibly could have took a game if Jokic never got ejected in Game 4 for the flagrant foul that they gave him. But especially because a lot of people complained because he was MVP, and they were like, you don't eject the MVP in a big game like this. The refs, yada yada. Like, the refs are the refs. They seem to want to have more of an influence on games than they should. But regardless, the Suns were coming out of the series, whether it had been 4 or 5, doesn't matter. They were winning. They just seemed to have the Nuggets number. Aaron Gordon just couldn't get it going. And a big part of it was Cameron Payne. Cameron Payne's rejuvenated his career. He's coming off the bench, giving them a spark that they absolutely need. Ayton is playing great two-way basketball. Mikal Bridges is giving them a spark as well. Jay Crowder is the unsung hero. We've seen the defense, although LeBron wasn't 100%, he seemed to slow him down, and just by being physical and just being present. And I don't know what's good with him, but he seems to be on every time. He's on the team that seems to just make it a far run. Like, he was on the Celtics when they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. He was on the Heat last year when they made the finals, and now he's on the Suns. So he seems to just find his way or be in the right place at the right time. So this series against the Nuggets, he played big against Aaron Gordon. In this series, in the Western Conference Finals, I know we're going to get into it, but he's been getting physical with the players, and it's, coming in handy for them.
Now for sure, and I think really the biggest thing that I saw in the Nuggets series, in the Suns series, is like you kind of mentioned it. I mean, you mentioned all the players that are kind of getting it done. You know what I mean? You got not only just Booker, but you got AN. You know, you got. I think the Suns are just playing better team basketball right now, whereas it seemed like the Nuggets were relying more on just a few players to try and get it done. And especially like you said, when you got a player like Jokic who gets ejected so early in the game, and you got the Suns who just been playing phenomenal. You know what I mean? Like everybody on their team is contributing, and they're playing team basketball. And I forget who said it recently, but you know, he said basically the Suns are playing different than anybody right now because the NBA, basketball kind of transitioned into positionless basketball, whereas the Suns aren't playing like that right now. You know what I mean? Everybody has an assignment. They know their assignment, and they're getting the job done. You know what I mean? Jay Crowder's hitting his shots. Cameron Payne looks like a whole different player. Like he's kind of doing really everything on the court. Devin Booker very clearly is just playing out of his mind. So I just think it's written on the wall. I mean, the Suns are just playing some of the best basketball of any team, period, in these playoffs, and it shows. And I think that's the big reason they made it this far, and I think that's the big reason for, my opinion, we'll probably get there in this conversation eventually, but in my opinion, I think they're going to end up taking the whole thing because they're just playing better team basketball than anybody. So.
Yeah, and I want to give kudos to Monty. Monty, he seems to have turned this team around prior to CP3 even showing up. Like, we talked about this on the podcast when we were talking about the bubble. Like, the Suns look like a totally different team in the bubble than they did prior to the bubble. And then since the bubble, they've just been on fire, and they've been playing at a high level. They've been playing like a championship team. And then since the season started, they just added better personnel, and it just helped them execute their goals and what they were already doing at a higher level. Like, they ended up being the second seed in the Western Conference, and now they beat the defending champions in the first round, whether they were hobbled or not. You can't take that away from them. Then they beat the Nuggets, who also were in the Western Conference Finals last year, whether they're hobbled or not. They did miss Jamal Murray. I'm not saying they didn't, but they outplayed both teams, and it wasn't even a question. Like, they've just been playing amazing basketball. Like you said, they've been playing phenomenal team basketball, and I don't see any other team that's remaining playing on their level at the moment. And we'll get more into it when we make our predictions, but shout out to Monty. He definitely deserves his credit.
Definitely. I mean, he definitely deserves credit. I mean, another thing, and you kind of mentioned it, is the health. I mean, out of all the teams remaining, they're probably the healthiest team, on top of the fact that they are playing the best team basketball. Obviously, Chris Paul is out, which is huge.
Sucks.
Yeah, which sucks. But they are one of the healthier teams aside from maybe the Bucks. And they're just playing, the best team basketball. Because again, like you and I both said, Ayton, you got Bridges, you got Payne, you got all these guys who are contributing and doing what they need to do, whereas all these other teams and even the Bucks are just kind of relying on, 2 or 3 guys, sometimes not even that, to try and carry the load. And once you get deep in these playoffs, especially with, we saw it. We saw it in the Nets Bucks series at the end. Like, KD, Harden, Giannis playing 50 minutes, like 50 plus minutes in the game.
They're gassed.
Like, they're exhausted, especially in a 7-game series. So the fact that the Suns are able to get the job done, or they were able to do it so quickly. They're just rested right now. They're as healthy as they really could be. Obviously, like I said, Chris Paul's not there, and they're just playing phenomenal team basketball. Everything is just hitting for them right now, so it's kind of perfect timing.
But can we talk about how CP3 was like injured against the Lakers, and then he all of a sudden turned it up and is not injured anymore? But the only reason why he's missing time right now is COVID protocol. But if it wasn't for COVID protocol, he would be on the court playing at a high level. So, how serious was his injury?
Yeah.
But I don't think he was injured. I think he was more hurt. So I'm not saying that he faked the injury, but it's just crazy how he just was able to just turn it off like a switch, or not turn it off, turn it on like a switch.
That's very, very true. But at the same time, I mean, Chris Paul has probably one of the highest IQs we've ever seen in basketball. So at the same time, like, he knows what he needs to do. Even when it's not scoring the basketball, even, regardless of what it is he needs to get done, he's going to get it done. And that's, more credit to him. He just makes it look easy. But I agree. I don't think he was completely injured. I think he was selling it a little bit, milking it a bit. I don't think he was completely injured. I do think he was hurt, though. Yeah. But yeah, I agree.
But you talk about how his IQ, and a lot of the players on the Suns currently are talking about his IQ and how much influence he has on the game plan, even when he's not present, whether that be on the court or in the locker room in general. Just because right now they're playing without him, and he's make sure to be on FaceTime on the phone with the team in their team meetings. Give the team pointers in what to do and what not to do. Like, he's truly the leader. Like they said, he's been there, he's done that, so they're just following his lead. And they say his communication is phenomenal. And so they truly just listen with the open mind, and it is just crazy. Like, just off of game one alone, like, they finished the game and Devin Booker and Aiden were walking into the locker room on FaceTime with Chris Paul. It's
100%. And there was even reports from Jay Crowder saying that Chris Paul's brother was actually in attendance and was giving them pointers directly from Chris Paul, who was on the phone. So, I mean, it goes to show you how much he cares about his team, his leadership. I mean, his IQ. Like, these guys want to hear what he has to say, regardless of whether or not he's in the arena. He's impacting his team in a positive manner.
Yeah, and just like the Suns, they're missing. Just like the Suns missing Chris Paul and a star player in Chris Paul, the Clippers, who they are facing in the Western Conference Finals, are missing a star in Kawhi Leonard as well. They were able to finish the Utah Jazz, the number 1 seed, in 6 games, but unfortunately, they had to do it without Kawhi Leonard, who I believe it's confirmed, he tore his ACL. So it's sad to hear. Obviously, you don't want to hear injuries. As a Laker fan, I don't want to see the Clippers win in general, but you don't want to see a player get hurt, like, especially someone like Kawhi Leonard, who's we've already seen come back from injury and already overcome adversity. So it sucks to see a player get hurt, but I'm pretty sure he'll be able to bounce back. Just like he did last time, and perform at a high level. So, best of luck. We both wish him a quick recovery at that. But the show must go on. And Paul George, they were clowning him, saying pandemic P, and he showed up for them when they needed him most, and they were able to advance past the Jazz. So before we talk about the Western Conference Finals, do you want to talk about the series between the Clippers and the Jazz?
No, yeah, Def. I mean, it's very clear. It's clear to me that I feel like there's only so much Rudy Gobert can do, and I think that's why it's so tough for the Jazz to kind of advance. And I mean, obviously, not that they didn't advance, but I just think that's why it's so difficult for the Jazz to kind of really make noise in the playoffs. I think, when I watch Rudy Gobert, I just feel like he's hit his ceiling. He's just below, in my opinion, he's a star player, but I don't think by any means he's a superstar big man. And I think really that's the biggest issue for the Jazz. I mean, Donovan Mitchell can clearly play out of his mind, but when you're talking about having a big 2 or even a big 3, or if you have a big 3, I think Gobert's fine. But I think when you only have those 2 players and you're kind of facing a stacked team like you are, the Clippers, or not a stacked team, but they have a lot of depth on that team, and maybe they haven't played as good as a unit lately. but they do have that depth. But I think for me, it's just hard because I think it's hard for me to envision Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell alone kind of making that much noise in the playoffs. And I think that's really the biggest takeaway that I got from that series. I just Rudy Gobert he can't take you there. I think that's what's so hard about it. I think Paul George did a great job. I was happy to see that he kind of was able to take the reins and take over and win them some ball games. But at the same time, I got to see him do it against the Suns as well, because I've said it to you, and I might have even said it on this podcast before. Like, I don't think he's been that guy since his Indiana days. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's still a good player. He's one of the best two-way players in the game, but he's not that guy anymore. You know what I mean? Like, he hasn't been that guy since he faced LeBron in the Eastern Conference Finals. Like, you know what I mean? But with that being said, like, it's hard for me to really envision him getting past the Suns. Like, I could go as far as saying I think the Suns will sweep this series too. So, like, you know what I mean? Like, it was a great series, but it's hard for me to see these guys. Like, they're very talented players, but they can't take you to that next level. Like, they're playing good, level of basketball, but they're not playing great.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest issue in terms of – I think that's the issue the Jazz had against the Clippers, and I think that's the same issue the Clippers are going to have against the Suns.
Yeah. So, in regards to the Jazz-Clippers series, I just feel like the Quinn Snyder was out-coached by Ty Lue. And I think that was the difference, whether Kawhi was present or he wasn't. And the main reason why I say that is just look at Game 6. The Jazz came out, guns blazing, couldn't miss a basket in the first half. Come second half, the Clippers came back. And they not only just came back, they won and ended the series. Like, it was no tomorrow. And that's credit to Ty Lue. Ty Lue is making the adjustments that he needs. And Rudy Gobert didn't look good at all in Game 6. And you talked about him already hitting his ceiling. I tend to agree. He wouldn't be a bad third option, but to be a second option on a championship team, I don't see it. But he just was exposed. And it's not like he can't protect the rim, because he's a really good rim protector, but rim protecting isn't everything. And the Clippers exposed it big time because they left him on an island. They were spreading the floor, and they were hitting their corner threes. So they're hitting their shots, but they were leaving him with a decision to leave the paint or go defend the corner three, and he just made the wrong decision, and they were exposing it. The best decision that they could have made would have been to go small ball. Jordan Clarkson was hitting his shots. They could have had him on the court with, Donovan Mitchell. They could have had Bogdanovich. Royce O'Neal could have been the small ball five, and Joe Ingles. Like, they could have made it happen. I think, but the issue was that they were outcoached. So credit to Ty Lue. He definitely outcoached Quinn Snyder, and people even joked around and compared this year's Jazz team to the Hawks team that got the first seed in the Eastern Conference years back with Al Horford and Jeff Teague in them. But it just is mind-boggling, because although they outcoached Quinn Snyder and the Jazz, I agree with you. I don't see them outcoaching Monty Williams and the Suns. And if I know they mentioned this on First Take before, like, what team needs their star more? Do the Clippers need Kawhi more, or do the Suns need CP3 more in this series? And I think the Clippers need Kawhi more, and especially after watching Game 1, how well the Suns performed without Chris Paul, and how high of a level Devin Booker is playing. He's playing out of his fucking mind. Like, they need Kawhi just to fucking guard this man, because if not, they're in trouble. So I could see the sweep. I'm not going as far as 100%. You and saying it's going to be a sweep. I could see it going like 5 games, a gentleman's sweep, but I wouldn't go as far as saying a sweep.
Yeah. 100%, I agree, and like I said, I could see them sweeping. 100%, I could see that. But I do think it'll end in 5. I definitely can see the Clippers at least winning a game. They're too good a team not to. I'll be surprised if they don't. like I said, I definitely could see the sweep happening though. But with that being said, I mean, 100%. I just, like you said, I mean, the Jazz were exposed. Rudy Gobert, aside from rim protecting, he just doesn't put fear in anybody's heart outside of being able to rim protect. You know what I mean? Like he's not going out there and giving you buckets every night. Like, you know what I mean? Like he's a great defender. I mean, defensive player of the year. He's been nominated plenty of times. I'm pretty sure he's won one. So the defense is there, but he's just a great rim protector. At the same time, like he's never really going out there and guarding outside the perimeter.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like he's not going out there and doing all these things. So that's why I feel like it's so hard to. Not that they don't have a talented team, like you mentioned a few of the guys that they have. You know what I mean? Like the Joe Ingles of the world and such. But you're not going to win games when your only two stars is superstar Donovan Mitchell and your star rim protector, big man. It's just you need more out of them.
Yeah, so I had the Jazz winning the series. So it was surprising to see the Clippers. I know they were starting to hit stride at the end of the Mavericks series, and they were hitting stride at the perfect time. But then the Kawhi Leonard injury happened, and when the Kawhi Leonard injury happened, I believe the series was tied 2-2. So I thought it was over. I was like, oh, like Paul George, even if he steps up, I just don't think it'll be enough. But the role players stepped up. They did what they had to do to get the series done. And in Game 1 against the Suns, Paul George showed up. But the role players didn't do enough to win that game. They basically were outplayed by the Suns role players. And that's exactly how I see the series panning out. I think Paul George will show up. But I don't think the role players will do enough to win them the series. They might do enough to win them a game or two, but I don't see this game going 7, and I don't see this series going in the Clippers' favor. And as a Lakers fan, I'm rooting against them. So out of the 4 teams remaining, let me put it like this: I'm happy with the 4 teams remaining because we're gonna see a fresh face win it. And I think Isaiah mentioned it. Like, this is where legacies are built. Like, someone's gonna create their own legacy this playoffs. But
I think it's Devin Booker.
Oh, I think so too. But I'm just the Clippers are the one team that I don't want to see out of the 4 remaining win.
Yeah.
And that's just because they're the Lakers.
Yeah, the LA. Yeah, def. I could see it. But speaking of the Suns a little bit, I just wanted to know. I had a question for you, and how you feel. Like, obviously, you being a huge Kobe fan, I am as well. How you feel about Stephen A. Smith comparing Devin Booker to Kobe Bryant, basically, and saying he's the next Kobe Bryant?
Well, Devin Booker is my second favorite player in the league. Yeah. And it's for a reason. So Kobe mentored him very closely. Before he passed, and I'm pretty sure he's seen a lot of himself in Devin Booker. Stephen A. Smith did say that offensively he's the next Kobe Bryant. I don't think overall he is, just because although he's stepping up defensively, I don't think he's the defensive player that Kobe is. But the 2 players that I can see Kobe in is Booker and Tatum. Like, those are the 2 that I feel like emulate Kobe the most in the league currently. And so I'm not opposed or I'm not disagreeing with Stephen A. because similar to Kobe, Booker can do it all offensively. I think the only thing that might work against him in that comparison is the defensive side of the ball. And I think that's where Tatum probably relates more to Kobe than Booker. But offensively, the dude can do it all, and that's exactly why he's my second favorite player in the league. The dude is a stud.
No, I mean I agree. I mean, you definitely see parts of Kobe in his game. Clearly, I mean, a lot of these dudes that he mentored. I mean, Kyrie, Jason Tatum, Devin Booker, a lot of people in the league who emulate a lot of their game after Kobe Bryant. He was obviously very influential. Yeah. The issue I take with it is, like, I just hate it. Like, I hate, next Kobe Bryant. Like, just let Devin Booker be Devin Booker.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what really bothers me about the comparisons, and that's why I asked you. I just wanted to know how you felt about it, because it's not necessarily that it bothers me he's comparing him to Kobe Bryant, but it's in the same sense like him saying Donovan Mitchell's the best Jazz player ever. It's like, I mean, Donovan Mitchell's already a superstar, as is Devin Booker.
Let him play out his career.
Let them play out their career. Let them build a legacy before we start handing out these titles of, next Kobe Bryant, next, best Jazz player ever. Like, he's a superstar, no doubt. But what has Donovan Mitchell done for the Jazz to say that he's the best Jazz player ever already? Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's like,
I mean,
just let these guys.
I agree.
That's
I agree
the only
with you.
issue I take.
I agree with you on that aspect. Like, when you asked me, I thought it was like, how do you feel about him comparing? Like, do you feel like it's disrespect, or do you see the comparison? Like, yes, I could definitely see the comparison, but I do agree with making the comparison isn't the brightest move, and I hate the media when they do this, because that was a big part of why I dislike LeBron as a player when he entered the league. Like, they were like, oh, he's the next great player. They were giving him or they're putting him on a pedestal and immediately comparing him to Jordan. He kind of put it on himself with wearing number 23, but he did it because Jordan was his favorite player. Like, he wasn't the first one to wear number 23, so it's just like they were making the comparisons as soon as he walked into the league, and to this day they're comparing him to Jordan, and the dude's career is not over. So wait till his career's over to compare him to a legend. Like, he's still like performing at a great level, and he's still finishing his career. As in this case with Devin Booker and Donovan Mitchell, they're just starting their careers, and they're just hitting their stride. They're just hitting their peak. Like, just let them build their legacy before you go ahead and make the comparison. But I can definitely see the comparison though, for sure. Yeah.
I don't necessarily hate it either. I definitely see the comparison. I just when you word it like, oh, the next Kobe Bryant, it's like, dude, like, let this guy build his own name. Let him build his own legacy. Like, who's to say Devin Booker doesn't end up greater than Kobe Bryant? Like, I don't know that.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And it's the same comparison they made with Ben Simmons being the next LeBron James. And then we've kind of seen how that played out a few years later. Obviously, there's still time for him to turn it around. But even if he does, I think just even if he were to turn his career around from here and have, a superstar career and just be all-time great, I think it's already kind of kind of taken a little bit of a hit just due to the fact that his career started out the way it did.
I mean, since you mentioned, we could move on and talk about the Sixers series, but before we go, I just want to say, who's to say that one day we don't say who's the next Devin Booker? So, like you said, Devin Booker could end up better than Kobe Bryant. Not saying that he will be, but it's very much possible. So, but with that being said, we can move on, because you did talk about Ben Simmons and what happened with him. The Sixers were knocked off by the Hawks of all teams, and the Hawks finished them in 7. So my question to you: who do you blame most on this series loss? For the Sixers, who's to blame the most?
Ben Simmons, in my opinion. I mean, you can't be that guy. Like I'm not saying he's the second option or even third option, but you can't be a star player of that caliber and be afraid to shoot the ball. You can't go out there and score 9 points in 3 games. That's insane. I mean, the Sixers have not a lot to figure out. They don't have a ton to figure out. They have stuff to figure out, but I think it's clear as day it is Ben Simmons. But I think also, as a team, they got to hold themselves accountable. If they never blew that lead, and I believe it was Game 5, we aren't talking about this at all.
It doesn't make 7 games.
They don't. It doesn't make 7 games. They're going to the Eastern Conference Finals if they don't blow that. So it's very clear that it's a team effort. You know what I mean? I'm not going to put sole blame on one guy, because it's a team effort. And I do think that, like I said, they don't blow that game. We're not speaking about this at all, but I think it has to be Devin Booker. I mean, not Devin Booker. Sorry, Ben Simmons. It's insane. Like, you can't go out there in 3 games scoring 9 points, looking like you're afraid to shoot the ball. Like Embiid said, he thinks the turning point of Game 7 was, we had an open shot, not even a shot, a dunk, really, open dunk, and we made 1 free throw. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy.
It's funny because
crazy.
that play of Ben Simmons passing up the open layup or even open dunk, he passed it, and then as his teammate got fouled, he like flares his arm up like. Yeah, what do you mean? Like, you could have just put it up and scored, but you gave it up.
It's like, bro, you were right there. Like, you shouldn't be blaming anybody but yourself.
Like, obviously everyone's to blame for the series loss, but the reason why I asked is, like, who do you put blame on the most? And Ben Simmons is a big chunk of that because although you did say 9 points in 3 games, the dude, I believe, shot like 3 or 4 times in the fourth quarter all series.
Yeah.
Like, in total.
Yeah, it's terrible.
So, in total. And like Shaq said on TNT, he basically said, like, I don't care if you miss. Like, just be aggressive. Like, we know you can't shoot, but just be aggressive. That's how you were able to average 14 points in the regular season. He basically said, in the regular season, you average 14 points. So, come playoff time, you should be averaging no less than 14 points. Like, there's no reason for you not, especially as the second option on the team or the second star on the team.
Yeah.
So
100%.
But he the one as far as saying if he was in his locker room, he would have knocked him out.
Yeah. And I've heard other players say it in the past too. Is like when you get to the playoffs, you have to elevate your game when you're at that level.
Sure.
So there's no excuse. I mean, 100% I agree. If you're hitting 14 points in the regular season a game, you should be able to hit 14 points per game in the playoff, at least. But there's no reason he couldn't have at least elevated his game and gave the Sixers 18 to 20 points a night. There's no reason. And, I mean, the inability to shoot is not an excuse. There's been plenty of players in the league. They compare him to LeBron James. LeBron James wasn't that great a shooter in the very beginning of his career. Everybody knows that. They always said he wasn't a good three-point shooter. Don't think it was nearly as bad as Ben Simmons is. But, I mean, he relied so heavily on his athletic ability. Ben Simmons is such a great point guard. Why isn't he driving the paint? Because even then, if you're not shooting it, you're kicking out to somebody else. You're drawing in the defense. You're kicking out to the open man. Like, there's so many more things you can do when you're not. There's so many things you can do when you're not a shooter. There's really no excuse for Ben Simmons at all.
So,
like, you know what I mean?
So I think he definitely put his last game in Philly. I think Philly. I said it before, and I'll say it again. I think Philly needs to split it up and not try to run it back. Not saying that Ben Simmons is a scrub, although he definitely has work to do. I'm not saying he's a scrub because he definitely has talent. And he definitely has stuff to offer for a team. But if you're going to run the point, you definitely have to be able to create your own shot and shoot. You definitely got to be aggressive. So he's got to work on his game. If not, then he's got to just play the 4 and bring up the ball here and there instead of being the primary ball handler. So, but I think his time in Philly's done. Philly's not going to accept him, or like I'm talking about Philly as in the fans. They're not going to want him back. So I think the best thing for the team is to keep Embiid. I know I talked about in the past to trade Embiid was probably the best because you could get more for him. But in this case, you just got to let Ben Simmons go. It's probably the best for both parties. I think Ben Simmons probably will do well elsewhere. But I'm not quick to just put all the blame on Ben Simmons. And for sure. But I feel like a good chunk of this blame needs to go on Doc Rivers. And I've said it before on our NBA special at the end of season 1. I think Doc Rivers is overrated. Saying he's a bad coach. I'm just 100%. Saying he's overrated. Everyone seems to put him at the higher echelon of coaches in the league currently. I don't. He's not a great coach. He's a good coach, and he seems to shrink up or curl up in the ball when it comes down to big moments. And besides that the Celtics team that won a ring, what has he done? Like, he's had talented rosters. Like, even early in his career, he had I believe It was Grant Hill and he had T-Mac and Grant Hill to start his career in Orlando. Then he went to Boston and had that team. Then he went to the Clippers and had CP3 and Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan. And what did he do? Absolutely nothing. Like that blow, the lead that they blew was on Doc Rivers. Like, I get he's not on the court and he can't play, but it's on Doc Rivers. It's on coaching. He was out coached, plain and simple. And it's not that wasn't his first rodeo and where he choked. I think in terms of like the biggest leads blown, I think in playoff history, like Doc Rivers owns like multiple of those blown leads.
Yeah, he owns the most.
No,
he definitely owns the most. Yeah.
Well, he has. I think he's number one on the list, but he's showed up on that list multiple times. So this isn't his first rodeo, or the first instance where this has happened in his career. So, as soon as I seen that happen, I looked to him, and although Ben Simmons has underperformed or did underperform all series, I did look to him and say, this guy is what I thought he was, and that's overrated.
100%. No, I agree. And speaking a little bit on whether Ben Simmons' tenure in Philly is done or not, I'm kind of up in the air about it because Philly has come out and stated that they plan on moving forward with Ben Simmons still. They feel like they know the work that needs to be done, and they're going to do everything they can to help him. So in that sense, it leads me to believe that Philly wants to give him another shot, one more shot at least.
I think it's best for both parties to separate.
But with that being said, I agree. But with that being said, that could be a smoke show. That could be, that could be just a look to help him out, just to try to up his value a little bit just before you get rid of him. And at the same time, like, I don't really know how you bring him back when, one, the fans in Philly probably never want to see him on a Philadelphia uniform again. The other superstar player on their squad, basically, I mean, he didn't try to, but how else was he really supposed to say it? I mean, Joel Embiid kind of shaded him in a way. He said, you know what I mean? What I said earlier is what he said, and it was very clearly about Ben Simmons. We had an open shot, and we made a free throw. We made one free throw. That was very clearly about Ben Simmons. It wasn't the worst thing he could have said. And honestly, I think he was going really easy on Ben Simmons because he could have said a lot worse.
Yeah, for sure.
But even so, just him saying that, I see it hard for me to believe that him and Ben Simmons are on the same court in the same uniform again. And third, Doc Rivers coming out and saying he doesn't know the answer to the question of whether or not Ben Simmons can be, a starting point guard on a championship team. When your coach doesn't have that confidence in you, it's kind of tough to go out there and play some basketball because it doesn't seem like Ben has the confidence in his own self.
Yeah.
So if he doesn't have his coach kind of helping instill that in him, I don't see where he's going to get it from. And so that's what makes it tough for me to see that he's back in a Philly uniform next year. And he seems like he needs a change of scenery, so it'll probably be better off.
I think it's similar to the Markelle Fultz situation. Change of scenery definitely will benefit both parties, or not both parties, the player in particular.
No, both.
No, I know, but I'm specifically talking about the player now. Just because Fultz going to Orlando, you see what that did to him and his confidence and his mindset. So maybe it's just Philly. Philly's a tough place to play. So maybe it's probably best for Ben Simmons to be out. And a team that kind of intrigues me, to be honest, I don't know what would be a good landing spot for him. But a team that first came to mind, that I don't know how they'd make it work, but I'd be interested to see Dallas. In that case, they give Luka some help. I mean, Ben Simmons brings something defensively. I mean, both him and Porzingis are both injury prone, so it doesn't make a difference. But he's a better defender. He also can take off some pressure for Luka in terms of ball handling. And if he can get his shot, like, at least improved slightly, like, that's something. But the least that they would need him to do is be aggressive in Dallas. And I think that would be an interesting pairing. I just don't know how it would necessarily work. But that would be good. But enough with the Sixers. We got to talk about these Hawks. Because these Hawks, they surprised us in the first round against the Knicks. And then all right, I'm gonna be up front. I had the Hawks winning this series only if Embiid didn't play. So, because there was questions that he was going to even play this series. The fact that he played this series, I was like, oh, the Sixers got it. Then the Hawks took game one. I'm like, oh shit. And Joel Embiid played that game. I'm like, they'll rebound. But they came out, and like you said before, if they didn't blow that lead, the series would have been over. But the Hawks still had the balls to come back and take that game.
Oh, 100%.
And I think they won 3 games on the road this series to win the series. So that's a lot on Trae Young. Although in this game, Trae Young didn't play his best ball. It was more Kevin Huerter. So shout out to him. He kept them alive. But Trae Young, his swag is giving this team so much confidence moving forward. Although I think the rain stops in the Eastern Conference Finals, I do think they're playing at a phenomenal level. They're proving everyone. They're surprising some folks. They're proving people wrong. And even if they don't win the Eastern Conference Finals, it's building their confidence going forward as a team. But shout out to Nate McMillan. I don't think he should have been fired in Indiana, but the fact that he was let go and then he became an assistant with the Hawks under Lloyd Pierce, and then Lloyd Pierce got let go mid-season, and they turned it around under Nate McMillan. And although he still holds the title of interim head coach, I think the Hawks would be stupid to move on from Nate McMillan.
100%.
I think he definitely deserves to stay and coach a full season. Like, the dude is a good coach. I don't get why he just can't find a home at this point.
Yeah. Now I'll say this: the Hawks, in my opinion, or if it were my opinion, because they were done round one, in my opinion. Like, I didn't see them making it out of that series. New York was playing really good basketball. Julius Randle, most improved player, was playing really good basketball. Had it not been for some phenomenal players, could have been in serious conversation for MVP. Obviously, I'm not saying he should have won MVP, but he was definitely having a year in which he could have had some weight in that conversation. However, the Hawks just came out and are they're just hitting on all cylinders. And so, like I said, for me, then a long time ago, but they're just coming out and they're proving me wrong completely, and I love it. But with that being said, I agree. I do think it ends in the Eastern Conference Finals. A lot of people do. A lot of people are kind of counting them out already. And that's what is kind of leading me to believe that, or not believe, but just kind of like hold my breath. Like, I think they could actually, get this done, because the Bucks are obviously, in my opinion, the better team. They're clearly the better team. They got one of the best players in the league. Not that the Hawks don't. Trae Young. Giannis has, he's on another level. Obviously, people say he has no bag and they clown him, but
he doesn't.
I mean, but he's an MVP. He's an MVP player for a reason.
Oh yeah.
So regardless of how you look at it, he's an MVP player for a reason. He's a superstar. He's a phenom. He's a great athlete. But with that being said, like, the Atlanta Hawks have surprised me already, because after they lost to the Knicks, I'm like, there's no way they're beating the Sixers. They beat the Sixers. And now they're facing the Bucks, one of the best teams in the NBA record-wise. I'm like, there's no way they're beating the Bucks. We don't know that yet. So I don't know what's going to happen yet. I still do think the Bucks will win probably 6 games. But I will not be surprised, man. I won't be surprised at all. The Hawks are just fucking... I don't even know how to describe it. Like I said, I didn't think they were making it this far at all. So
yeah,
more power to them. I hope we see a Hawks Suns finals, just because.
Yeah,
because that is what sounds like the wildest shit I've ever heard. Like, if you told me a few years ago, we were gonna get a Hawks Suns final, I'd be like, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard.
There's gonna be a 3-point party if it's the Hawks Suns finals. But
100%.
But I believe in the NBA special. I had talked about whether it was on camera or not. I talked about the Hawks. I think the Hawks were going to make the playoffs. So I did have the Hawks making the playoffs. So that didn't surprise me that they made the playoffs, but it surprised me how much noise they're making. So, so shout out to them. They're doing their thing. They're bringing the swag to the court. Trae Young, although we're just experiencing this now, but I guess I think it was Draymond said he's glad that we can see how big of a trash talker Trae Young truly is. But it's like he's embracing that villain mode everywhere he goes, which is dope. And I think it's good for basketball. So
no, 100%.
So I love it.
It's funny to me that the dude went into two of the most hostile environments in sports in terms of fan base. Yeah. Two of the most hostile environments, New York and Philly, and just like shut everybody up.
Yep.
You know, like it didn't matter what fans were saying. Regardless, he just went. He played basketball and his team won. Like,
yeah.
and like you said, he's just playing with so much swagger. Like, he's talking so much shit. And it's kind of like the same thing with the Devin Booker situation. It's like we're finally getting to see them in this light, and it's like fucking amazing.
Yeah, exactly. and I would love to see them make the finals, but I just don't see it happening. I was quick to like immediately when I just think of the series Bucks Hawks, I'm like, oh, Bucks are gonna win in 4, right? That's my initial thought. Is like, oh, Bucks are gonna win in 4. Like, who's stopping Giannis? No, because honestly, no one's stopping Giannis besides Giannis. Like, the dude gets in his own head, and the dude has no back. He truly doesn't. He runs a QB draw every single fucking play, and that's why he's the best in terms of transition. Because you can't really stop him once he gets going. He's a freight train. But like, and I said the dude needs to go hit up Phil Handy in the offseason and get himself a bag because he's definitely talented. He just doesn't have much to his game. And he's just pure raw talent, pure raw athleticism. So if you give him some skill, the dude's going to be a problem. And I think he's going to be a problem because he's going to be a mismatch and nightmare for the Hawks. However, I don't think it's going to end in 4. I agree with you. I think it's going to end in 6. The Bucks are going to take it in 6. And the reason why I give the Hawks 2 games is just because of the swag that they've been carrying for this entire playoffs. Like, we've been doubting them since the beginning, and they seem to prove everyone wrong. So I think they're going to prove people wrong and take in some games, and they're going to make people question whether they're going to push a Game 7. But I think the Bucks, in the end, let's say Game 6, will somehow find a win to win a close one to end the series. So I think it'll be a tough series for the Bucks to win. But I just think the Bucks, in terms of talent, they just have better talent. Like, especially at top-end talent. Like, they have Drew Holiday. They have Chris Middleton, who's on any given night, you don't know what to get from them. But Harvey, shout out Harvey, he's been on the show. He said it best. The Bucks are as good on any given night, depending on how Chris Middleton plays that night. Like, they are as good as Chris Middleton when he plays that given night. And against the Nets in Game 7, he's playing lights out. And look, they won. So
and it's true. I mean, you can see it. So what Harvey said is completely true. It's almost like, obviously, Giannis is Giannis. Like, he's an MVP player. He's a superstar caliber. But really, the Bucks are going to only go as far as Middleton takes them. Yeah. And that's just – it's very clear as day because whether when he had good games, just like Harvey said, it's 100% true. Like, when he's had his good games, they've won. And when he just isn't fucking shooting, he's not scoring, like, they don't win. And that's just – it's literally – it's undeniable. It's right there in your face. Yeah. It's kind of streaming at you. So it's funny how that works. But to speak a little bit about the Hawks swagger, like you were saying, I agree 100%. I think a lot of that just has to do with confidence as well. Like, I feel like confidence makes all the difference in the world because it makes, it's weird how, like, it makes good players look great. And I mean, we've seen it. I mentioned Cameron Payne for the Suns earlier, as did you. Like, he's playing with a ton of confidence, and he looks like a completely different player. Like, he's going out there against guys that he shouldn't be, and he's just balling on them. Like, you know what I mean? And that's just what confidence does. It looks exactly the way that it did for Tyler Herro and Duncan Robinson last year. Dudes were just playing with a ton of confidence. And a big reason for that is just, obviously, their team camaraderie. Like, Jimmy Butler was a great leader for them. So I think a lot of it had to do with that. But just like I said, the confidence was just there. Like, they were so confident. They went up, like, played against the Lakers in the championship. Obviously, they didn't win, but Tyler Hero was fucking making, faces like he was the man against fucking LeBron James. Like, you know what I mean? So, when you play with that type of confidence, it just elevates you like crazy. And it's kind of like what they say when you see one, like if you're struggling, once you see that first shot going, it's like that's all you need. Like, and it's kind of the same thing. Like that first shot that gives you confidence. It's like when you're playing with confidence, it almost feels like you're unstoppable. Sometimes you are.
And to move on and talk about the last series in the conference semi, I picked the Nets in 7, and that was prior to the injuries and whatnot. And I do think if they were healthy, they would have advanced. But things happen. I mean, this playoffs, it just seems like stars are dropping like flies with injury, and it could be because of the short turnaround, short off season. But although they were hurt and hobbled, KD literally played every minute. He played lights fucking out. He's proved why he's one of, if not the best player in the world. It's just he was gassed at the end of the day, come Game 7 in overtime, and he was literally a toenail away from taking the Bucks out. But it just wasn't enough. They went to overtime, and the Bucks were able to finish it. And although I didn't have the Bucks in 7, you did. So speak on it, sir.
So I'll say this just very quickly. Like, obviously, KD's lights out. Like, dude, like I said, everybody was kind of exhausted at the end of that game. Dude played 53 minutes. That shit was wild. But he went lights out, 48 points, almost dropped the 50 bomb. But just the Bucks just had what it took to kind of outlast them, and that's all it really was, because it almost seemed like KD kind of had the Brooklyn Nets on his back. And what really bothered me a little bit about the Bucks Nets series, or even just Game 7, if we want to talk about Game 7, because when it's a 3-3 series, I don't give a fuck. You're playing one game. Like, regardless of how the rest of those games went, this is the last game. Win or go home, you win, you're moving on. So 3-3, forget about the rest of it. It's 0-0 right now. And the biggest issue I have with Game 7 is I feel like James Harden is getting off really easy right now. And I'm kind of surprised. I think he's getting off really easy. He had 22 points, no doubt. 22 points is great. But when you carry yourself the way James Harden does, and, you're basically, for the past two years, he's felt like he was snubbed for MVP. And I can't argue whether or not he was or not. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he definitely had some MVP caliber seasons. But when you're complaining every year about how you're getting snubbed for MVP, how you think you're one of the best players in the world, when you say you're one of the greatest scorers ever, when, analysts are coming out and comparing you to Kobe Bryant and saying you're probably already a better scorer than him, you're probably the best scorer we've ever seen. Like, when the media is coming out and saying all this, how do you come out and, one, only score 22 points? Because 22 is not a bad game. But when you're the greatest scorer ever, or one of the ever, you cannot drop only 22 points in a Game 7. Not to mention that it was on 5 of 17 shooting, which is not even 30%. That's 29%. That's 29.4%. So that's why I feel like he's getting off easy. I'm not saying 22 points is a bad game. But when it's on 29% shooting and you're supposed to be one of the greatest scorers ever, I just think he's getting off easy. I think Durant having to go out there and score 48, if you put up 30 at least, you win that game. And even on even 22 on a more efficient night. You know what I mean? I feel like he's getting off easy, and that's why it bothers me, because I feel like it's any other superstar player and they're getting ripped apart. Yeah. And I just haven't heard anybody really give Harden anything.
And my thing is, since the series has ended, a lot of people are comparing Kevin Durant to LeBron at the moment. Like, oh, LeBron carried this team or worst team to the finals or what have you. And it's not like Kevin Durant didn't do everything he possibly could have done to win that series, but the dude really had no help. Like his two sidekicks, Yes, they were sidekicks, even though as great of players as they are, they both were injured. Like, Kyrie got hurt and didn't play the rest of the series. James Harden was hurt, yes, and he re-aggravated it game 1, but he managed to come back. And to be honest, I was surprised that he even had 22 points, especially after the way he played the 2 games prior. Like when in game 5 when Kevin Durant really needed James Harden and he just showed up in terms of being on the court. He looked like he didn't need it. He looked like he shouldn't have been there. Like it was just more. It was more of his presence being felt.
And they might have been better off without him.
Yeah, but the only reason why the Nets won that game, yes, Kevin Durant played out of his fucking mind, but Jeff Green stepped up and gave Kevin Durant the help that he needed to win that game. So game 6 was another story, but game 7, they really needed someone to step up. Jeff Green gave his all in game 5 and never showed up again. And James Harden, yes, I was surprised he had 22 points, but the fact that he had 22 points, like you're saying, he's one of the greatest shooters ever. Like there's no question, but there's people who are saying that he is the greatest the greatest shooter ever, or what have you. But like he's amazing at what he does. And yes, he had a hamstring injury, and I get you're kind of hindered. And should you have been healthy, it would have probably been another story. But it's game 7. You gotta give it your all, and you're shooting. I don't know much. So I'm not gonna say it. Like I feel your pain in saying like he definitely is getting off a little easy. But I do say that like his injury did play a part. But in game 7, when you had 22 points, in terms of efficiency, like you said, he shouldn't have been shooting as bad as he was. Like especially at the caliber of player that you are, especially in what the strength of your game, which is shooting, you shouldn't have been shooting that bad efficiently wise, or efficiently.
Yeah, and not only just that. Like I'm not for slandering players. Like, like props to all these guys. Like they fucking work their asses off, even when they have bad games. Like it's understood. Like shit happens. Like I said, I just think he's let off easy in the sense that, when LeBron James is struggling because he's hurt, it's, you know what I mean? Like, he's getting ripped apart.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't stop anybody from calling AD street clothes. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you clowning on all these guys, you can't have it both ways. Like, you can't just clown on the players you want because you don't like them. You can't pick and choose. Like, it's the same. It's the same, like Quavo said, to Big Baby. He's like, dudes are clowning AD when he's hurt, but like, what about you, big baby? Like, you were hurt. Like, no, I can't clown you because he's like, it's the same thing.
Oh,
like,
Perkins.
You
Perkins.
can't just,
it was Perkins.
Or Perkins. You know what I mean? So I'm like, you can't. You just, it's stupid. Like, in general, like I said, I'm not for clowning players when they're hurt or when they're playing bad. Like, I think it's stupid. Like, you know what I mean? Like, these guys work hard when they have bad nights. Like, it is what it is. But I'm just saying, like, in the sense of these dudes being ripped apart, why is it one way for one player and another way for another player? Hold everybody accountable if that's the case.
Yeah.
And whether or not his hamstring was bothering him, he played the game. You know what I mean? Like, you played the game. If you are hurt, like, I get it. Props to you for playing hurt, but don't then use that as an excuse for why you played bad if you do play bad. Then just don't play. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's the same when a fighter comes in to a fight and then loses and makes some random ass excuse. It's like, if you knew that was the case going into the fight, like, then don't fight. Just to then just use that as your excuse for not winning it. It's the same thing, and it's just ridiculous. It's like, go out there and play your game and play it the way you got to play it. And,
it's funny that you
deal with the consequences.
It's funny that you mentioned like that was your only issue with this series. My issue with the series. So first off, this is an issue, but I just want people to stop slandering Kevin Durant, like, because they lost. Although I slandered the Nets only to Maj, shout out Maj. He's been a Nets fan since the New Jersey days. But only reason why I slandered.
Actually, wearing the Suddenly Famous gear.
Yep, Suddenly Famous gear. Shout out Suddenly Famous. Go cop some merch when they drop some. But but the only reason why I was joking with Maj and stuff like that is because when the Lakers lost, he was clowning them. So it was just payback in a sense. He was like, but Kevin Durant is still he's still my favorite small forward of all time. The dude played spectacular all season long, especially coming off of an Achilles injury. The way that he played is just mind-blowing. Like, then he showed out in the playoffs. Like, stop slandering the man. He did what he had to do. He just truly didn't have, the supporting cast to get him to the next round. Because they were inches away from, literally inches. It was if he was like you said, if he was a half shoe size smaller, they would have been in the next round. So Kevin Durant truly hit the big shots he needed to necessarily win. Come overtime, yes, he didn't perform, but the dude was gassed. Like
the only thing. Yeah, but the only thing that you could say bad about Kevin Durant is the fact that he airballed the last 3.
Yeah, but
the last one. That's the only bad thing you could say. Dude played 53 minutes. Yeah. He was exhausted. Had defense all upon him and missed the 3-point shot.
My only issue with the series was the fact that Giannis came out and said, Kevin Durant, he's the best player in the world. Mind you, this is coming from one of the best players in the world, the 2-time MVP, and defensive player. Wait, is he 2-time MVP? He's a former MVP and a former defensive player.
Back to back.
Yeah,
I think he won back to back.
He's former MVP, former defensive player of the year, and you're calling another man the best player in the world when you should. Although, it might be true, you should have that. You should have that confidence in. Oh, I'm the best player in the world. And what made it even worse is that he watched his teammates get cooked. It was all game 5, but pretty much the whole series, he watched them get cooked. And he didn't be like, oh, I'm the defensive player of the year. Let me go guard the best player, the guy I call the best player in the world. Like maybe I have the best chance of stopping him. You're not going to stop Kevin Durant, but maybe I have the best chance of slowing him down. Like, you have the frame to give him problems. But it's 100%. Like he spooked.
I think Giannis is just being honest with himself. He knows just like we do. He has no bag. 1, and 2. I think Harvey again. Shout out Harv. He's been on the show for our NBA episode. You guys know who we're talking about. Shout out Harv. But I think he said it best when he said that he thinks Giannis needs to understand nobody's expecting you to go out there and completely lock up KD. Yeah. Like, we're not going to clown you if KD goes out there and drops 30 points on your head. But we don't want, or not that we don't want, but you don't want him scoring 48. Like, you know what I mean? So nobody's expecting Giannis to go out there and completely stop KD, because it's just not going to happen.
No one can stop him.
Like, it's not going to happen. Nobody can. But I just think, like Harv said, like, you just need to go out there and play that defense. You're defensive player of the year for a reason. You got just as much length as he does. Probably the best fit person on your team to guard him. And like we said, he was exhausted. He was exhausted in overtime. Just the fact that your presence on defense is there, he probably would have been that much more tired having a defensive player like you on him all game.
Exactly. So if he dropped 30 on you and you made it tough on him all game, like, that's a tough 30. Like, you could have had really great defense, but it was just better offense. Like, you could say he earned that 30 points. Whereas if you let him cook your teammates for 48, like, it was basically easy buckets, easy pickings. Like, he went up court, it was like, oh, easy bucket, swish. Like, he knows, like, oh, they're not gonna give me a problem. Whereas if Giannis is guarding him, Giannis is big, he's strong. Like, this is gonna be a battle. But no, he didn't have that mindset, and I think mentally he just isn't there yet. And Phil Handy, I don't know if you heard the All the Smoke podcast interview with Phil Handy on it. He talked about when he was with the Raptors, and I forget who he was talking about in particular about in the run. Who did the Raptors play? They played the Sixers in the Eastern Conference Finals. They played the Warriors in the finals. They played. I forget who.
Are you talking about the year they won?
Yeah, the year they won it.
I don't remember who they played. Are you talking about first round? Who they played?
I think it was the Bucks. They were playing the Bucks, and he basically said that they went into the game and they were like, Nick Nurse was like, oh, we're going to make some adjustments for next game and we'll get back to you. And Kawhi was like, the adjustment is I'm guarding Giannis. And then they walked out.
That, yeah.
And that was it. He basically said, yeah, that like Kawhi is like Terminator. He truly is like what the Terminator is. And that's
he knew what he needed
and that's
to do.
what we expected from Giannis. Like at halftime of Game 5, he should have realized Kevin Durant is frying these guys. So he should have been like, Coach, the adjustment we're making in the second half is I'm guarding KD. Like that's it. And from that point on in the series, he should have been even though he should have been guarding in Game 1. From that point on, he should have been guarding him for the rest of the series, but he didn't, and that's my only issue with this series. Although it was a great series, I loved it. That was my only issue.
I actually agree though. I agree completely. I also did have issue with that because I completely agree. And like we said, nobody's expecting you to stop him. Like you know what I mean. Like, but I guarantee, if Giannis is guarding him all game, he's not having 48. He might have 30. 35, he's not going to have 48. It's hard to get 48 tough buckets. Like, we saw how exhausted the guy was after dropping 48. He would have been tired. A big physical guy like Giannis who got the same length as you guarding you all game, it would have been a way different. It would have been a way, not, I won't say a way different series. I think it still could go 7, but I don't think the Bucks have to work nearly as hard to finish games out either. Yeah. You know what I mean? So,
but it was an amazing series. I know I mentioned it earlier. I'm just happy that we're gonna get a fresh face as a champion. It's definitely rejuvenating just to get something different, but it makes that next year that much more exciting because all these teams that are currently left are building confidence. They're gonna carry that into next season. But not only that, the two favorites to have made the finals, we missed out on the Lakers-Nets finals, but who's to say we don't get that next year? And both teams,
with healthier,
both teams are going to get healthier. Both teams have a chip on their shoulder. So
both teams are probably going to get better.
Yep. So this is going to be an interesting offseason, and next year's going to be interesting. But I'm interested to see how this year finishes out. I know we talked about the Suns making it to the finals and winning it all. Who do you have coming out the East? I know I have the Bucks coming out of the East. I'm assuming you have the Bucks as well.
Yeah, like I said, I definitely think the Hawks can make some noise. That's why I won't even bother disrespecting them again because I already did all the rest of the rounds by saying they weren't going to win any of them. But I think they'll definitely surprise some people. I think they're capable of taking it to 6. I won't be surprised if it even gets to 7. But I do think the Bucks take it. But like I said, I will not be surprised if the Hawks get it done. They're just playing with a different kind of swagger right now. And again, like I said earlier, confidence is everything. That might be what it takes just for them to kind of get past these Bucks. Is because the Bucks don't look like they're a very good team, which we both agree they're the better team. But something that they don't have that the Hawks do have is confidence. And we can see that very clearly because they come. You don't know what you're going to get out of the Bucks night in and night out, for sure. And that's the issue with the Bucks. And so so that's why I say I won't be surprised if the Hawks win. However, I don't think they do. But they do have enough confidence in which the Bucks lack. So I think we're going to get a Bucks Suns finals.
I agree, and I have the Suns winning in 6. And I think Budenholzer, he saved his job for at least one more series because if they lost against the Nets, he would have been fired, and I wouldn't have. Although he's a good coach, I don't think that would have been the bad decision or to fire him. So he at least saved his job for one more. Although I do think even if they win the championship, they should fire him just because I think they just need to move in a different direction. I think the only way his job is saved is if they make the finals and win it. He might save his job if they just make the finals and lose. But if they win it for sure, I think that's the only way his job will be saved. Or just make the finals in general. But he at least saved his job for one more series. If the Hawks pull off this upset, he's gone. But I'm picking the Suns in 6. I think I said it when they beat the Lakers. I think the Suns are going to win it all. And I really hope that that's the case. But I'm gonna say like this. I know I said that Devin Booker is my second favorite player in the league, but if he goes out and wins Finals MVP, I'm copping myself a Devin Booker jersey, and that's it.
I mean, I'm not sure if you remember. I said I think he will get his first Finals first chip and first Finals MVP this season. However, DeAndre Ayton is my dark horse for the Finals MVP. I think he could come out, have a series, especially if he comes out and does it against another big man like Giannis. Obviously, Giannis is, like we said, very good defender. He'll probably shy away from guarding Devin Booker outside the perimeter as well, just like he did KD. But I won't be surprised. Ayton looks like he's gotten a lot better. It looks like he's got a lot of confidence as well. And he's finally kind of coming into his own, kind of becoming that player that people expected him to be when he was drafted a few years ago. So it's pretty cool to see that too. And I know you were talking about fresh faces winning the championship. It's not just, and I don't know how you meant that, but it's not even just cool to see that there's kind of going to be a fresh franchise to win it, because none of these teams have won. There's two of them that haven't won at all, and there's two of them that haven't won since and there's two of them that haven't won since the merger. So it'd be definitely a fresh championship in terms of teams. But we're going to see some fresh superstars winning stuff too. Like Chris Paul doesn't have one yet. You know what I mean? Giannis doesn't have one yet. Devin Booker doesn't have one yet. Trae Young doesn't have one yet. So even just seeing that is phenomenal. So I'm excited, honestly. As a Lakers fan, 100%, even as a Lakers fan, like, as much as it fucking sucked, seeing us lose, as much as it has not been, like, it's playoff basketball. I love playoff basketball, but it's not the same when the Lakers got eliminated. Like, it just wasn't the same for me, because, it's my team. But obviously still having watched it, like, it's been phenomenal. It's been fun. And even though we're out, I am excited to see, like, two teams get to the finals that I really have no dog in the fight, but, just get to watch good basketball without having to be stressed. Yeah. You know what I mean? So,
and it's funny because when the playoffs started or the playoffs were approaching, I told my cousin Eli, he was on the show, shout out Eli. I told him when we were talking basketball, I was like, as a Laker fan, the one team I don't want to play in the first round is the Suns. And it's not that I know I said the Suns were a better matchup for the Lakers than the Jazz were, which I still stand on, but I just didn't want to see the Suns in the first round because I knew what they were capable of. And to see the success or see how well they're performing in this playoffs, although I'm bummed that the Lakers lost in the first round, it kind of it puts me more at ease that we lost because of how well the Suns are performing. Like, I know there's, like, yes, if AD was healthy, we could have advanced, but, like, the Suns are showing that even if AD was healthy, it's not guaranteed that we could have, made it out. So it definitely makes it easier. But what's dope is 3 of the 4 coaches remaining are minority. They're black. So shout out to them. Hopefully one of them can pull out NBA Finals this year. And hey, that's all we have. I know I said Suns in 6 for the finals. What about you?
I feel like I got to get there first. But if it is the series that I expect to see, Phoenix Bucks. Obviously, if it's a different series, we'll get there when we get there. Yep. But if it's Phoenix, Milwaukee, Suns in 7.
Okay.
I think Suns in 7.
Alrighty, you heard it here first. So we both have, Suns, Bucks. I have it in 6. He has it in 7. If it's not that series, we will, come back to it and let you know our predictions. But the Suns are taking it in our eyes. So let us know in the comments below who you guys have making it out of each conference and who's your pick to win it all. And let us know your opinion on anything we talked about this episode. So if you're mad that we said something in particular, go ahead. We're up for it. We want to debate with you. That's what we're here for. So make sure to comment. Make sure to like, follow, subscribe if you haven't already. Show some love. And we have something brewing. So we have our bonus episode this month. I know you guys been waiting, and we have our first interview on the show. and it was definitely dope to experience, and we're excited to share it with you all. So stay tuned. It's going to be dropping on Monday. Jovan, I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, definitely. Yeah, so we just recorded our first Balls Deep interview with an athlete. Stay tuned for who it is. It was definitely fun. Like Devin said, it was fun, so stay tuned for that. Show some love, leave comments, like, follow, subscribe, and show some love to our boys at Expansion Pack as well. As always, they're hilarious if you love gaming. But really, that's all I have to add, man. Just appreciate you guys as always, for watching and listening to our insight and following us for as long as you have, however long that may be.
Alrighty, and that's all. Until next time, peace.
Deuces.
You're talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. We're talking about balls deep in love. I'm talking about balls deep. My boy's talking about balls deep. We're talking about balls deep in love.